final shaping, what we do is we stretch it out, fold about 1/3 of the way down, fold the 2 corners in, and then roll. So this is then I thought I'd show you how I make my sourdough, starting off with feeding the starter. This here is a jar of starter that I've been feeding for about 12 months. So I keep that in the fridge and I pull it out and I feed it once a week. We tip out some of the sourdough, and then I'll take that over there, whack it on the scales, and grab some flour, and I'll feed. So what I do is I start off with a spoon that's been through the dishwasher so that it's fairly sterile. I'm going to make my normal batch of sourdough. So all that requires is about 200 grams of starter. So I'll feed this now with 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water, and that gives you a 100% hydration on the starter, which is what I'm after. I'll just grab the water. Best to use filtered tap water, but because we've got bore water with no chemicals in it, we don't need to worry about that here. Now it's as easy as stir it up. So that's had a good mix. I'll pop the lid on it and we'll let it sit, and that'll have to sit for anywhere from probably an hour to an hour and a half, and that'll allow it to double in size. So the critical thing when you're making sourdough is to work out how much dough you want to make. I usually make 3 loaves, and I make those 3 loaves at 900 grams a loaf. So I'll show you how to make the calculation. Okay, so this is fairly straightforward. So as I said, 3 loaves at 900 grams equals 2,700 grams. 2,700 grams. Now I bake at 65% hydration. I've worked out that's about right for the wet season. Dry season I go to about 70%. So 2,700 grams. So 100% is flour and 65% is water. So you go 165. So 2,700 divided by 165 equals, trusty calculator, 2,700 divided by 165 is equal to 16.36, so 16.36 grams. Okay, 16.36 grams. So 100% is flour, so that will be 1636 is flour, and 65% will be water. So 65 times 16.36 is equal to 1063. I could have worked that out. 1063.4 is water. Now, tricky bit is I know that for roughly this amount, they say it's between 10 and 30%. I've worked out for about this amount of dough, I'll use 200 grams of starter. So I know that the starter that I made, as I showed you before, is 100% hydration. So that means 50% water and 50% flour. So what I need to do is I need to take 100 grams off of each of these. So that makes that 1536 grams of flour, and that makes that 963.4, 963.4 of water. Okay. Now, the other thing that you need to know, so we'll just write down 200 grams of starter, 2% of salt, so 2% of 16.36 equals 32 grams of salt. That's basically the calculation. You can apply that to any amount of dough that you want to make. And now on to mixing the dough. First of all, we'll start with some water. as per our dough mix, we worked out that we needed 963 mils. Next in with the starter, which has doubled in size, we'll go 200 grams. Then with the flour, so 1536 grams. Zero that. And then last of all, the salt, zero that again. And 32 grams. Last of all, grab a decent sized spoon and give it a mix. And the consistency we're after here is something shaggy. So just bear with me a second and I'll give it a fairly thorough mix. And I'll show you what shaggy looks like. Probably also just worth mentioning that I use an unbleached flour. This Wallaby Baker's flour seems to work pretty good for us. You can substitute in some wholemeal flour. Also useful is one of these scrape good mix through here, and then I'll show you what the shaggy mix looks like. Basically, that is a shaggy mixed dough. Now the next thing that we do is just grab a bag and put over the top of it, and then we'll let it sit for half an hour before we do our first stretch. Trusty old Woolworths bag, spread over the top, and we let it sit for half an hour. So half an hour on, we'll give our dough the first stretch. I like to wet my hands so the dough doesn't stick to my hands. You'll see the still reasonably shaggy, and I'll show you all three stretches because what we do is we go, we wait half an hour, we do a stretch, we wait half an hour, we do a stretch, we wait half an hour, we do a stretch, so that takes an hour and a half total, and then we let it sit for an hour and a half before we separate it into three separate loaves, let it sit for another 15 minutes, and then after that we shape it, put it in baskets and let it rest overnight. So the process here is to fold. So what you basically do is fold it in each corner in on itself, sort of like, if you can almost imagine like you're making an envelope. So all four corners. I didn't get a bit, so I'll do the last bit. Just fold it in on itself, so you can see I've basically folded that in on itself, and from here we basically just cut it and let it sit for another half an hour. Back after the second half an hour. We'll give it another fold. It's starting to feel a lot more doughy. Doesn't feel as shaggy as it did. The consistency is quite a bit smoother. So give it a good stretch. You can see there it's much smoother, not as shaggy as it was. Back in the bag. Leave it for another half an hour. And one last time, we give it a stretch till we leave it for an hour and a half before we do our final shaping. As you can see now, that's getting really stretchy. Bag up, keep the moisture in. See you in an hour and a half. Now after an hour and a half, we'll tip the dough out onto the bench and separate it. You see that I used the scraper that I mentioned before to scrape out of the bowl. And then I've got this other dough blade that comes from the catering shop. So I divide it into roughly 3 equal pieces. Flour on my hands and roughly shape. So I'm just going to let this rest for about 15 minutes again. Just let it sit on the bench. Find if it starts sticking to your hands, just pick a bit more flour up. This just has to be rough. Get a bit of tension on the dough, and then we'll shape it again. Shape it again in a minute. This one's a bit small, so I'll just pinch a bit of dough off that one. By rights, you should probably weigh them out, but I don't bother, as long as they're roughly the same. Okay, we'll just leave them for about 15 minutes. For the final shaping, what we do is we stretch it out, fold about 1/3 of the way down, fold the 2 corners in, and then roll. So this is how you roll a batard shape, which is what I make some basic loaf shapes. Down, stretch, down 1/3, ears in, and roll. And the idea is, as you're doing this, you're just trying to stretch the outside of the dough to create tension. Last one. And last. last thing that I do is I just put these little shower cap things on that come from the $2 shop. And that stops the dough from drying out too much while it stays in the fridge overnight. Okay, I'll pop those in the fridge. And they'll be ready to pull out first thing in the morning for a bake. And that's how we make our sourdough bread. If you like this video, please subscribe and press the like button.